lovely souls out there. It is I, Rikuhan, the Lich. It is a Saturday, or no, it is a Sunday. I wish it was Saturday. I lost a day. It is a Sunday. And we've got basically kind of, decent amount of hours here to spend with you. We're going to be playing some No Man's Sky. But before we do that, I want to address a small little something. And, in the grand scheme of things, pretty minor. But it's a message I kind of want to get out. So, and I alluded to this Tuesday, Thursday, I can't remember. Might have been Thursday. Basically, what you see here, all of this, is just for my own enjoyment. Should I be lucky enough to make some sort of, career out of this, where this can be my sole source of income, I, would absolutely love to get to that point. But I know, I'm a small streamer. I'm a VTuber. I'm a male VTuber. And therefore, this is a pretty bare bones model here. Nothing very exciting. Nothing very flashy. And so, I've got a long road ahead of me. I've got 17 followers. I need at least 50. My viewership is hit or miss. It's going to be a while before I hit affiliate status. My personal life is such that I don't have a whole lot of time to spend. But I kind of want to talk about, what you see in front of you here. This floating skull with his hair on fire and little more than a cloak. This is me being the entertainer as much as I possibly can be, especially at the moment. This is an entertainment channel. That's solely what this is for. And I ran into a person who mutually followed each other on Twitter. And she made a statement. And so I want to basically address that statement and the conversation that we had, brief as it was. But basically, this is entertainment. What goes on when all of this is done is personal. And what I do or don't do in the political sphere is after all of this is done. I keep these two separate. Mainly for my own sanity, such as it is. So, when I see a tweet from somebody who I'm following and is following me, this is a VTuber. She's on Twitch. Her name is Existential Bread. 2,400, almost 2,500 followers on Twitter. She's probably got, last I saw, like 1,000 or so. Or 1,500 or so, subscribers. So she's at affiliate status and everything like that. Joined Twitter in May of 2025, so she hasn't even been on Twitter for a year, and she's already got this many followers. And okay, so I've been around a lot longer, and she's doing far better than I am. Whatever. She's very, very, very politically left. And, I mean, she's basically been going on us, right now she's kind of going after Rev and anybody that kind of supports Rev. Which, I'm not going to necessarily defend because, I got to the point where, I was a fan of Rev when he was just doing news stuff, and then he started using woke as a pejorative. And it's like, oh, okay, now I know what kind of person you are. I don't necessarily need to watch you anymore. But, I guess, Rev got himself into, some amount of hot water, and so she and amongst many others are leading a crusade against him. The problem is that she's also leading a crusade against, quite frankly, anybody who doesn't share her political views exactly, including those who might actually share her political views to the most part. Which gets me to this. So January 26th, which let me get my... She posts... Well, so on Sunday, whoever this Tamashi person is, posted a... VTubers need to shut up with the not to be political. Stop trying to save your brand when people are dying. Be fucking political without demeaning those who always have been. Stop trying to save your brand. Okay, in response to a lot of the stuff that's going on in the United States, with everything that was going on in Minnesota over the past couple weeks, and ICE and all of that sort of stuff, and it's a valid cause. I'm not necessarily going to deny that they're okay. They want to go out and, so Existential the next day hops on this. Literally, if you care more about your brand and follower count than you do speaking about this shit, your soul is appalling. Don't keep overflowing the most disgraceful amount of assortment of deplorable rubbish imaginable. Okay, for one thing, you're taking it exactly from Dr. Seuss. You're not quite quoting. It's a close paraphrase of the Grinch, and more so the Grinch song, the theme song, from the Grinch. I hope one day you're too sick to your stomach thinking you're discussing inaction to be able to sleep. Okay, so she's obviously, she has a side. She's taking a side. This is her side. That's fine. To which I reply, I let my FleshTuber side do the talking. My real life side, the VTuber side, stays out of it. Okay? That's this. This is an entertainment person. I have no desire to be political here. This is my escape from being political when I'm not this person. Okay? To which she brands me a coward. So, I was following her, so I stopped following her. And, here's the thing. She doesn't know me. None of you know me. That's the beauty of being a VTuber, is the anonymity. Now, I'm not trying to be quite as anonymous as most people. I'm not that famous for starters, but I'm also not that paranoid. And I'm gonna the extreme end of anonymity would be somebody like Iron Mouse, right? Who does not want anybody to know who she is. She does not want anybody to connect, the Iron Mouse VTuber with whoever she is in real life, right? that concept has frightened her her entire existence as being an online personality. From the very moment that she started. Probably even before. I mean, if I remember her lore correctly, for example, she started streaming before she became a VTuber. She'd post a few things before she got the model, her very first model, and then she's basically been a VTuber ever since, and it's been 8.5 years, right, since then, right? So she's, her online presence, so she's been very, there's my cat, she's been very careful about that. I'm not quite that careful, I don't really care that much per se, but the point is that the amount of that anonymity that this gives me allows me to have a life outside of this. It allows me to have a life outside of this, and what I do in my time when I'm not being I'm pretty political. In fact, and I do tend to share many of the same feelings and emotions that she is. It's a very simple fact that she feels the need to attack anybody who you can't tell me what I can or cannot do with this channel. And because you don't know who I am, you don't know what I'm doing behind the scenes. I could just be a poor schlub, literally poor schlub, living in a too small apartment, just shouting into the void online. I could be a local politician, or maybe even a state or federal politician. It does happen. You do see people that hold office online. I mean, how many times has Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez done, games on stream? It's not often, but she does it. A few other people have. And, because I'm this floating avatar here, you don't know. I could be in front of cameras, explaining policy or my vote or whatever, and then, I mean, I only come on the stream a few days a week. What am I doing in my spare time? I could be roaming the halls of some Capitol building, or some city council building, some school board. I could have other hobbies and things that, I could have work, just a regular 9-to-5 type job. You don't know. And how political I am when I'm not being this, you don't know. And you somehow have the need to sit in judgment, because I decide to keep those two separate. My real life side does any kind of a political thing, The VTuber side is entertainment. It's a break. I mean, I'm too small to even have a platform. Okay? So, I'm judging you based on your unwillingness to speak out against any of this stuff, because my apolitical channel. Who says I'm not speaking out against this stuff? I'm just not doing it online. I'm not doing it with this model. I'm not doing it on this channel. I'm not doing it on this channel. I may be doing it on other channels. Because you don't know me, existential. And, you know, I watch some other things. It's like, and here's another one I got into. Roku69. Speaking of other VTuber scene, fully solidifying that their VTuber culture is absolutely not the right one. The VTuber should be apolitical crowd is incredibly and outwardly right-leaning. Not true. Being apolitical online just means right-wing, but I don't want to admit it. Like 97% of the time. Well, I must be the 3% that doesn't fall into your narrative there, buddy. These three are the type of left-leaning people that vote for third parties when the Democratic candidate that they want doesn't go as far left as these people do, and will therefore allow the GOP candidate to win the election. The reason why we have the president that we have is because people like this went so far into the weeds, they couldn't bring themselves to vote for the candidate that was going to keep the current president from office twice. Okay. And again, I've got a social media life outside of YouTubing, and then I've got the VTubing social media. Right? I keep those two separate. Okay? And nobody has a right to tell me what I do with my VTuber channel. Because you don't know what I'm doing when I'm not being a VTuber. You don't know what I'm doing on my other real life channels. You don't know what kind of political stance. Well, you don't know what kind of political stance I have. But you don't know what I'm doing, and you don't know how much action or inaction I'm taking on that political thing. But here's the thing. I've been voting for longer than most, if not all, of these three people have been alive. I'd have to look, see if maybe any of these people given age, Roku's like 18 plus, whatever. Okay. How much over 18 are you? Are you 25? 30? 35? Okay. I've been voting since 1992. Okay? I've been voting since 1992. If any of these people have a birthday past that point, I've been voting longer than they have. And in that entire time that I've been voting, I've not once voted for any GOP candidate. Ever. Not once. And have no intention to. The way things are going. But yet they feel the need to sit in judgment of anybody who does not decide to take their channel, their entertainment channel, and make it political. And speak out. I speak out in other ways. I speak out in other forums. I speak out, when I speak out as myself. Not as Rikuhan. Rikuhan is an entertainment channel. You have no right to dictate at all, at any time. So I'm calling the three of these people out, and anybody else who agrees. What, 3 people, 4 people? Because this person over here started it. 2. How long ago was this? 27th. So this is all in response to, Tamashi and Existential. And the Existential, quote tweeted it. Further down her thing. Oh, and by the way, after this little exchange here, she blocked me. She blocked me. And we didn't even get to quite finish the exchange because I had more to say. Basically, what I'm saying now. She blocked me before. So if you're gonna engage in this kind of stuff and not be willing to, realize the fact that you're arguing with an ally here. You're pissing off an ally. You're pissing off somebody who shares pretty much the same political beliefs as you. It's just, I don't want to do it on this forum. I don't want to do it in this way. I do it in other ways. And I don't do the whole marching in the streets kind of whatever thing that. Well, I don't. It's like how much marching in the street does she do? She's a streamer. How often does she stream? Is she out marching in the streets between that time, or is she just using, you're just shouting into the void? You're preaching to the choir. How much actual work are you actually doing? By sitting there on your computer like I am, and shouting out into the void. And you get all your little followers out there saying, yes, you're absolutely right, how good job, yada yada yada, and you're fighting against anybody who might come, any of the right wingers might come in there and harass you about it. But what actual work are you getting done? When was the last time you voted? And who did you vote for? If you voted at all. Because when it comes right down to it, that's how you change whatever it is that you're legitimately upset about. The best way to end this is to make sure you vote for the right people when the time comes. You vote those people into office, and then they end this to the best of their ability. So if you're just sitting there shouting into the wind, and also not telling people to vote a certain way in the hopes that you influence those people to actually do so. And I'm not talking about don't vote for third party candidates. There's two political parties in this country. There's really and this is what has gotten other countries into a lot of trouble in the past. There's really there's really two political sides. Maybe three. There's the right side, there's the left side, and if you want to count like a third middle line, that's really, the middle is where things get done. You compromise. That's ideally the best place for everybody to be, is right dead center. You take a little bit of the conservative end, you mix it a little bit with the liberal end. You talk, you argue, you compromise. You find a middle road, and most people are happy. Not everybody, but most people. But, this country is too divided amongst those extremes. Most countries are. You very seldom find a good middle, a country that's right middle. Most are one side or the other. And the problem is that when you have multiple parties, and I speak on this as a historian. I used to teach history. I come at this from a historical point of view. When you have a right and a left, and then you split those into multiple different parties, you run the risk of dividing the votes amongst so many different parties such that the wrong one wins. And it's happened time and time again. And of course, and the most obvious extreme everybody uses it obviously, but you have to remember, that it's cliche, but obviously, the Nazi Party in Germany in 1932 only won by 33%. They only had 33% of the vote. Not even close to a majority. But what happened is that the vote, all the votes against them, the other 2/3 of the votes that weren't for the Nazi Party, went to the other Conservative Party and like 3 or 4 parties further to the left. You had so many parties voting for the election in Germany in 1932 that even though 66% of the population voted for parties not belonging to the Nazi Party, that vote was divided up so much that the Nazis were still able to win the majority, and Hitler was able to take control of Germany by only 33% of the vote. Everybody else had less. So when you have two parties, when you have two sides, you really only have two parties. And when one party puts up a person that is so vile, and then the other side, because the main opposition candidate doesn't exactly match your ideals, that you vote third party, you take away votes from the opposition person, and the vile person wins. It's happened actually many times in America. We're living through one of them. It happened in Germany. It's happened in lots of different countries. Even okay, you got the corrupt countries out there where somebody wins because they declared themselves a winner, and now all the votes against them didn't count. Even though if you obviously counted it, they would have lost. You've got those kind of corrupt countries out there. But where you have free and fair elections, every vote counts. Every vote is counted, and you divide the vote. The vile person can win because you take enough of an extreme view. Like she takes. Like these guys take. That you run the risk of not, you run the risk of voting for a third party candidate or something because the biggest opposition person doesn't fit your ideals to the letter. They're not, this isn't a puzzle piece. If you don't want one of the people running for an election to win, you've got to vote for the person most likely to stop them from doing so. You can't go third party with that. You can't, you got to go for the major party. Even if you don't politically, once the person gets in office, and then you can, and the thing is that all of that has to, so many people vote for Libertarian, Green Party, whatever, here in the United States. All these little third party things. And the thing is, you only do that during presidential things. These people almost never float anybody in smaller offices. There's no green representatives out there. There's no libertarian representatives out there. The closest you get to a libertarian representative is they're flying the GOP banner. You get people like what's that guy in Tennessee? I don't know. Whatever. You get you get those people. They say they're libertarian, but then they'll run as a Republican. You'll get maybe Green Party or whatever. What's the other one? I guess Green Party's the other big one. They'll run as a Democrat. Sometimes, or they'll run independent. They're not running any kind of, you get like Bernie Sanders. He doesn't run under any banner. He sides with the Democrats. He votes with the Democrats. He's not a Democrat. He's not the Green Party. He's not in anything. You get a few of those, but no Green Party candidate sits on any House, Senate chair. At least at the federal level. I don't know how many of them sit at the local level. I doubt any of them do. They don't run at that level. They run at presidential levels, and all they do is they're stealing votes away from one candidate or the other. Anytime you get those third parties, they're stealing from the major candidates. And if you get somebody in one party that is so vile, you got to make sure that you vote for the other person to make sure that they win. And that's not what happened these past two times. And I'm making maybe a lot of assumptions here, but it's basically people that have these kind of viewpoints. That will gladly attack people on their own side of the political aisle just as fast and as handily as they'll attack people on the other side. Because they don't share their, you got to do what I'm doing or you're not really worth it. Well, no, I do things in different ways. There's different ways to do this and be just as effective, if not more effective. Shouting into the void, preaching to the choir, is not effective. Voting is effective. Getting people to vote is effective. So I hope they're doing that. I hope they, but, if you have a problem with what's going on in the world today, then you need to vote for the person and the people who are most effective in best position to stop it. You can't do protest votes against the other party who might be able to stop it, because that won't stop it. You're just throwing the vote away and giving the other side a chance. Okay. If the other person gets 100 votes versus thousands, and you're one of those 100, what have you done? And if the other side wins by that 100 votes that you gave to the other person, or even, 50 points, 50 votes, if they only win by 50, if you're voting for, like local politicians, those votes can be determined by just a few dozen votes between who wins and who loses. If you got a third party person out there and you're not going to vote for the major candidate because they're not fitting, they're not fitting your ideals like this, you're just taking votes away from the person who could do the job, and then the wrong then the person that you don't want gets into office and they make all sorts of trouble. So, you gotta watch who you make enemies out of. So, I've ranted way long enough about that. So, we're gonna go back, and there's my political rant. How you like that, Existential?